I'm here with Stephen Almond, the Director of Technology and Innovation at the UK's ICO. Stephen, it's lovely to see you again, and thank you for joining us today. There are so many developments coming from the ICO. I feel like we need to make this a regular feature almost.
Always happy to keep coming back.
Excellent. Of course, last time you and I spoke, I believe it was in March, we talked about the launch of the innovation service. But today, I would like to hear a bit more from you on the final version of your agency's guidance on pets that's just come out a couple of weeks ago in June. And just to refresh all of our memories, the ICO had issued initial draft guidance on pets in September of last year. And really, it was one of the first ones from a data protection agency, which took a look at some of the technologies, looked at risks and benefits in connection with data protection compliance and pets, and really tried to provide a path to assess whether or not pets should be used in a given scenario by organizations. The draft guidance was open to consultation until the end of last year, and here we are now with the final version in hand. Stephen, since the launch in September, has your team's thinking on pets evolved? What changes have been incorporated into the final version of the guidance? Maybe also from the input that you received through the consultation. So what has changed basically compared to the initial version?
So we were delighted with the response that we got to our consultation. We had a really positive response with people coming in from not just kind of pets developers and the tech community, but responses from industry more broadly, from civil society, from law firms, standards bodies, public authorities. And it's really helped us, what I would say is kind of tighten up the guidance. So we got really good feedback on areas where we could improve the clarity or where we could make it more practical, or just around, for example, our use of technical terminology. And what we really hope now is that this product provides a really practical guide for organizations that are thinking about how to introduce privacy enhancing technologies for all the great reasons that you should be doing that, how to make sure that you're doing that in compliance with data protection law. And so it goes through a whole suite of different privacy enhancing technologies and really starts to unpack them individually, because whilst it's a great class of technologies, they are all quite different.
Indeed, and I think it's sort of in two parts, right? One is directed at the privacy professionals, if you will, in the company, the DPOs, etc. And the second part is more on the technical level, if you will. So as you say, trying to keep it quite practical. I must say that the guidance really is a very strong endorsement of pets by the ICO. Commissioner Edwards even recommended in the press release that went along with the release of the guidance itself to move to the use of pets within 5 years, where organizations share large amounts of data, and those where that data specifically also contains special categories of data. And of course, at CIPL we do support pets strongly as well. As you know, we launched our own project and will soon come out with our first report. But I would love to hear from you a little bit on how the ICO intends to create incentives for organizations to move to pets in this timeline that was also suggested, obviously not for everybody, but with this strong endorsement, to what is often so perceived maybe a costly and not always as mature technology. Will we see this playing a role, for instance, in enforcement?
So pets, and first of all, they enable safe data sharing. They enable organizations to make the best use of the personal data that they hold, and unlock innovation and a variety of benefits for both organizations, but more broadly for society, in terms of the sorts of use cases that we're seeing, whether that's enabling sort of tackling of fraud, or enabling better health data uses, for example. So we're really keen to see those benefits unlocked. And when it kind of comes to the crunchy question around, well, look, how does this look in with compliance? There are several very clear kind of concepts and principles in data protection law that give it quite a clear hook. So you have, for example, the security principle, you have principle around data minimization, you have the concept of data protection by design and by default. And what we said is that actually, in certain use cases, we're going to be getting to a point in the not too distant future where actually it becomes slightly less of a, you might want to think about pets to a bit more of an expectation for actually, in terms of, keeping the data secure, using only the data that is necessary and proportionate to fulfill a particular task. For example, a bit more of an expectation from us as to why wouldn't you be using pets, particularly in the most kind of significant use cases here. So recognizing it's not going to be a one-size-fits-all approach by any stretch of the imagination, but in these sorts of use cases where you are seeing very, very large scale processing of financial data or health data, for example, is this a security measure? Is this a data minimization measure that actually we should be seeing mature to an extent that that organizations should be using it slightly more routinely?
So in addition to this basically being considered, this is part of the accountability program, if you will, of an organization. It almost, in your view, may move to this is state of the art, and you should be using this kind of thinking. Yeah,
I think it will vary according to the different setting. Some are slightly more mature, some of the use cases are slightly more mature than others. So I won't speculate on exactly sort of where. Of course, it all depends on the technological progress over this period of time. But for organizations that are probably potentially thinking, can we wait this out? Can we relax and see how this goes? Actually, this might be the time to start leaning in and really thinking quite hard about pets in terms of different use cases.
And how will your team be supporting this process for organizations on a very practical level? Because there will be questions on is this the right pet to use in this context? Is this mature enough? Is our risk assessment, do we have the correct parameters? So is this something, for instance, that can be discussed as part of the innovation service, or how do you envision this?
Absolutely. So in terms of I suppose the barriers to pets adoption, one of the things that we've known is what's driven the development of our guidance here is that organizations that are looking at quite technologically complex use cases are really looking for clarity from us as a regulator, and the development of our guidance here is the first step in this process, but it's not the last step. You're absolutely right to highlight our innovation advice service, whereby if organizations have a question in relation to the application of data protection law to a particular product or technology, they can get clarity from us within 15 working days in terms of a turnaround from us. We actually launched the advice service in full form just last week. So we're really keen to encourage organizations where they've got a question about actually, how does this apply in this particular use case? How might you interpret the security principle in this particular use case? Please come ask us. We're here to help.
Great. You've also, first of all, congratulations on launching the full innovation advice service. But then you also recently announced that you have a joint project with the Center for Data Ethics and innovation to develop a PETS cost-benefit analysis tool. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how that fits into the strategy and how this is intended to aid organizations trying to implement PETS or thinking about it at least?
Of course. So, look, we know that there are many organizations that are still perhaps unsure of the value of PETS relative to the cost of setting up. The technology in different use cases, and then actually demystifying some of this is going to be really important if we're going to help organizations support investment decisions in these technologies. So the cost benefit tool, which is being developed by our partners at the Centre for Data Ethics and Innovation, will really help both organizations understand the value and particular contexts of PETS and provide more concrete information about the costs, so that organizations that are thinking about, I suppose, dipping their toes into the water here and understanding how to how to adopt these technologies actually have a much firmer basis for understanding and taking that investment decision.
I think that's really helpful. And just another really good example of how the ICO is leaning in and trying to provide that very practical assistance to organizations. I have a final question for you. On the international arena, Commissioner Edwards also emphasized a commitment to facilitating and driving PETS recently on the occasion of the G7 Tokyo Roundtable of the G7 data protection agencies. That was just last month. What can we expect there as next initiatives?
So we've been delighted to share our work with the other G7 data protection and privacy authorities so that we can really spark a global conversation around privacy enhancing technologies. We know that it's really important to organizations that there is alignment of approaches, particularly if you're thinking about using PETS, for example, in the context of something like international transfers. Right. We have agreed with our G7 counterparts to look at, in particular, a particular sort of use case and context around synthetic data, and to investigate that sort of jointly together. But the conversation is also very fluid in terms of exchange of information here. I'd also say that some of the conversation, both at kind of a national and international level, is not just with our fellow data protection authorities, but it's also with standard setting bodies. So, for example, in the UK, talking to the BSI internationally, the role that's played by, for example, ICCC in this space. We know that if we're going to make it easy for organizations to use and adopt these technologies, there needs to be real thought going to, actually, what are the sorts of management standards that you might want in place in terms of actually getting the governance right, making sure that you're fine-tuning parameters in the right sorts of way, and what about the detailed technical standards, actually, particularly if you're looking at interoperability, that are going to be needed to actually make PETS work at a much larger scale. So we're really keen to see that sort of area progress too.
I'm delighted to hear that. As you know, at CIPL, we are very much about convergence and trying to find solutions that work in a broader context. So this is really all very positive. And I'm very much looking forward to discussing next developments with you on our next talk. Thank you so much for your insights, Stephen. It was a pleasure, and see you soon, I hope.
Thank you.